Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Anyhow, Anyway, a podcast by Summer England. I'm your podcast host, Summer England, and we talk about everything cozy, chaotic, literary, writing, bookish, smutty, sometimes all of the above, sometimes nothing. It just kind of depends on what's going on. But at the end of the day, it's always cozy. Now, something that I've been really enjoying lately is that I've had a lot of messages from you all, which is very exciting, saying that this is your favorite low stimulus podcast. And I really love that. I really appreciate that because I overstimulate myself. But I guess there's something about how quick I talk or the way that I talk that specifically scratches the itch in ADHD neurodivergent brains of those who identify as female, which is very niche and specific. And apparently I'm doing that for you. I would like to say that I am the neurodivergent Delilah. And if you don't know who Delilah is, you simply must get on it because especially as we're all craving this 90s nostalgic, going back in time, early aughts, which I think at the end of the day, what we're really craving is connection and not a lot of access to tech. I think sometimes tech is so overwhelming because when we ask for opinions, we're going to get them. When we search for opinions, we're going to get them. And at least for me, that can sometimes make it difficult to decipher what do I feel, what do I like, because we're just inundated all the time. And there's good things about it, and there's also bad things about it. But at the end of the day, I think that it's getting us towards this movement, or I don't know if it's necessarily a movement, but a longing, a yearning to go back to a time where that wasn't even an option. And I've been thinking about that a lot recently in this like butter mom aesthetic and 90s nostalgia and early aughts nostalgia. And they don't make movies like this anymore. And Come Spend an Afternoon with Me in 1998. And why I've been thinking about it is because I've always lived my life that way because I'm poor, or I was poor. I'm not as poor as I once was. I would say that I am safely middle class now, thanks to randomly social media and books and et cetera, et cetera. But for a substantial amount of my life, I was below the poverty line. However, I always made enough. And I also was in that generation where tech really didn't hit its boom until I was like 14 or 15. But because I was homeschooled, I was already so behind that I had no interest in understanding how tech was operating from a sociological standpoint. I didn't care what people were talking about. I had no interest in like understanding meme culture because I just did not value it. And I also didn't value that type of social connection that felt more like how much do we know rather than how much do we connect. And I think that's just a benefit of autism and ADHD sometimes, because we sometimes have a capacity to, or tendency to talk about it in a way that is a negative. However, my brain is the only thing that I will know all of my life, and I want to like it and want to see the good in it. And so my brand of ADHD autism, I just don't understand the value. I genuinely don't. Like if you asked me what does it mean to trade a meme back and forth, I could not tell you how that related to getting closer to an individual or fostering a friendship. Now, as an adult, of course, niche references to movies is the quickest way to my heart. Oh, you watched Toddlers and Tiaras on TLC, which is very specific. Okay, then we need to talk at least because we have something in common. Do you know what I'm saying? Anyhow, all that to say, I lived my entire life, not necessarily analog, but tech really didn't rule it in any capacity. And especially after my divorce and I was a single mom and I had no money and a baby to support, all of the fun things that we were going to do together were going to be the library. It was going to be watching reruns of shows on YouTube. It was going to be that sort of type of engagement. And the thing that I have always valued the most in that situation is that it is inherently cozy. It does not ask a lot. And I enjoy when life makes decisions for me. I really enjoyed the era where I couldn't choose what to watch. It was just on TV. Now that TV is limitless in its options, I do not watch TV. I do not search out a new show because there's something about I'm the one who has to make the decision that completely I just don't want to do it. It's not even decision fatigue. It's simply, I don't want to do it. I would rather just turn on the TV and happen to watch Pretty Little Liars because it's on the TV. And then we'll go from there. So I don't know. I think I get so many messages, and I've talked about this before, about whimsical motherhood and the butter mom stuff. And butter mom basically just means like 90s situations. And I don't know what to tell people because under no circumstances am I trying, nor will I ever try to do anything that's trending. I remember when cottagecore came around, and the way that I dress has always been the way that I dress, meaning I look like I can always be herding goats home. Everyone was like, oh my gosh, I love cottagecore too. I love that you're doing this cottagecore style now. And I was like, this isn't, I'm not trying to be hipster or anti-mainstream. I'm not that type of person. However, this is just how I dress. So it just goes to show you, if you just pursue the things that you enjoy, not only will it more than likely work out for you and opportunity begets opportunity, but at some point you are going to be the front of trendingness. And then when you're not, other people will appreciate that you're not. You know, like it's such a mercurial game that I'm not interested in playing. And so because I'm not, at least for right now, how internet discourse works and how I am perceived by people, both like in my town where I act and I'm very frontal facing and, you know, full frontal summer England. And then in author and then online, I'm just presenting the way that I am. And I don't know, I guess it's trending in weird facets in odd ways. But all that to say, this does bring me in a very ADHD roundabout way to what I want to talk about today, because we are continuing the Cozy in the series, which basically is we are choosing to be whimsically audacious in the face of this world. And that does not mean that we are ignorant or we are choosing to mute out the pain of others or what have you. We allow all things. It's balance, baby. But the only way I am able to step into my community in a way that is helpful and sustainable, both for my personal life and for the lives of those around me that I'm able to help in any way or just add a gentle amount of positivity to, is to maintain whimsical coziness in my life and to continue choosing it and circumventing all the ways in which it shouldn't be an option, but I will make a way to do it. And so today we're doing cozy in the office, okay? For all you working lasses, lads, and noble days, okay? That's what we're talking about today. We are talking about it specifically from the vantage point of somebody who is self-employed and works from home, because back in the day, I did have an office, and we can talk about that at a different time. I did have an office, but I don't have as much experience or data collecting about how to make my life cozy in like an accounting office, whereas I have been some iteration of self-employed for the last several years. And you know, if you're a longtime listener or you're a longtime follower, I love to collect data. I don't necessarily present things to myself in ways of that was a success, that was an utter failure. Each of those data points are data points in my brain and register the same. They have different influxes and consequences, good or bad. However, for the most part, I'm like, great, I learned from that. I learned that was successful. I learned that that wasn't successful. These are both really good things to have. Let's move forward. And so why I want to talk about cozy in working from home is because I was really good at being not cozy working from home. So for me, working from home and being self-employed can present a specific difficulty because I am a goal-oriented person. I am a person who will hyper-focus to an unhealthy degree. That is definitely me, to the point where it feels like my brain is an illegal substance that must be stopped. I need to be excised from my body. And there is a pressure that I put on me and still struggle with even today, that I am self-employed. If I don't do something, I can't pay my bills. I can't feed my kid. You know what I mean? It's like a real pressure, because both of those things can be true. But at the same time, I have had to learn, and I am still learning, that just because I am self-employed does not mean I can abuse myself as an employee. So I have spent the last probably 3 or 4 years having tough conversations with myself, because I had a tendency to go in these cycles where if I had a project, if I had a novel deadline, if I needed to get this content up, if I needed to what have you, et cetera, that I would work sun up to sundown, no breaks. And the issue is that when I'm in those modes, nothing feels as good to me as getting the goal done, which isn't necessarily a good thing in its extreme. I can appreciate that my brain has the capacity to, I have a lot of self-motivation. I think I am confident in saying I am a person who is more self-motivated than maybe anybody I've ever met because of stubbornness. Okay, flip side to that. I also can completely acknowledge that even if it feels good in the moment, can really hurt me in the long run. And I have done it over and over and over again. And it's actually been exacerbated when I became an author, because I mean, there's nothing better than creating to me. And so when you're self-employed and you're writing and there's a deadline and I have an agent and I have all these people I don't want to disappoint, and also I feel very dedicated to this story and to read, et cetera, I'm excellent at putting pressure on myself, which again, there's a good and a bad side too. I'm not saying all pressure is bad. I'm not saying being uncomfortable in your goals is bad. The way that I was doing it, and still have a tendency, that is my go-to that I've tried really hard to fight against. So anyways, I would get in these cycles where I had a goal, I had a thing to finish, I had a thing to complete, or I had downtime, because on the flip side of my life, I have been full-time self-employed. I also work and have worked as a full-time professional actor, and before that, a full-time professional actor and a full-time professor at the undergraduate and graduate level. And so there was a time where I was doing 3 jobs all full-time, and my self-employment status was it was toxic for myself because of how I was treating myself. And I was getting into these cycles where I just wasn't present. And even with my kiddo, I was thinking of all of the millions of things that I could be doing. And because I am self-motivated, because I know what can ride on a goal, in my head, it was making sense of, I need to finish this so that at one point I can start to live. I need to finish this so I don't have to think about it anymore. It's not hanging over my head. I would love to play with you for 3.5 hours, but I feel listless and like this time meant nothing. And I don't want to feel like that. I don't want to feel like that. And then when the neighbor came into my life, I noticed when we first started living together, when we would just have like TV time on the couch, I felt so like I had achieved nothing. And I realized that because I started out my single motherhood so poor and coming out of a divorce, I began my self-employment career, 1, out of joy, it was, and it was by accident, but 2, in a way that was like, okay, I can support my family. I am financially independent, but I would like to be financially stable-ish, and it would be nice to not have this fiscal anxiety. And all of that was what began my self-employment career. And because I began it in that mode of I really want to make this work and I want to make the most out of this, and I'm so grateful, and I know other people don't have access to being able to work from home, I drove myself into a hole. I drove myself positively mad, absolutely mad. And for a while, I struggled being really angry with myself because I was like, why do I keep doing this? I know that I do this. I know that I have the tendency to say yes to too much because I will give you a product at the end and it will be good, or it will be something, or it will be complete, or it should have been impossible that I was able to do it. And I will give it to you at severe cost to myself and my sanity because I just didn't give myself a break. I didn't give myself a break. I did not have healthy boundaries with myself. And so after that experience, over and over and over again, to the point where I put myself into an autoimmune flare for a year. I lost hair. I couldn't grow my hair. And I have like very long, luscious hair. And I say that, and I will say that while my hair looks like I'm God's favorite child, I have a bum unit gut and I can't eat like sugar without vomiting. So, tomato, tomato, you win some, you lose some. Anyhow, I went through these experiences. I put myself into an autoimmune flare over and over again. I was so burnt out in all of my careers. I was burnt out in my relationships, all of this stuff, but I just kept going and going and going. And then finally, I was like, if I were my employee, I, as the boss, would at least have an ankle bracelet, Martha Stewart style, because the way I have been treating myself as an employee is unacceptable. It is unacceptable. And I'm a union worker. I'm pro-union. I am an equity actor. And a lot of times we have to fill out these surveys or take part in these discussions where we are constantly and consistently talking about the workplace and how to make being a creative sustainable. And I was not applying those principles to myself whatsoever at all. Sure, I could be pro-union when somebody else was in charge of me, and I would fight for the rights of myself and the rights of my fellow colleagues and, making sure people had parental leave, and we should have more than one day off a week. We should not be doing a 6-day, 8-hour rehearsal week, 8 hours a day rehearsal week, and then a 6-day work week, and then we're doing 5 shows on top of that. Like, we should not be doing that. Or if we are, we should be getting paid way more. Totally fine having those conversations at larger scales. With myself, I wasn't giving myself that. And it was like twofold because I realized that, and I was like, okay, I got to change. And I also realized I really didn't want my son to think that this was okay to do to himself one day. Like, I would hope that even if he is really goal-oriented and he's a self-starter and all of these really positive attributes that I'm not trying to villainize in myself, nor let alone other people, because boss queen's got a boss queen, okay? There is still, you can be a boss queen and you can work 12 hours a day and you don't have to treat yourself like that. So my journey to Cozy, why I share that in particular is because my journey to having a cozy in the office, as it is with everything that I'm sharing in being, whimsically audacious in the face of the world and et cetera, which is a very grand sweeping thing, but I think something that we can all really latch onto because that's why we read fantasy. That's why we read romance, is a pocket of happiness despite XYZ. Because I had that journey, my curation and my conviction of having coziness is something I worked really, really hard at because I failed really, really hard at it over and over again. Now, as I said before, success and failure are all data points. I am also able to acknowledge that while I did not have healthy boundaries with myself, while I was the world's worst boss to myself as an employee, I had to start somewhere, and that's where I began. I didn't begin healthy, and at no point in my life did I have healthy leadership given to me in any capacity. So of course I was going to start the best way that I knew how and with the tools I had in the moment, which was I am perpetually self-motivated to the point where I will burn out, but somehow turn into a black hole and suck everything into me. Like I will get it done. I will get it done. And we live and we learn. So, cozy in the office, a hard-earned task. To be self-employed, again, I think circles around to you have to treat yourself like you would want another boss to treat you because you are a human and you have to have good treatment, good and fair treatment in the workplace. There's also major benefits of being self-employed, namely, you get to work from home, which for me is a very, very exciting situation. I am someone who requires social interaction like a camel does water in the desert. I can live off a little bit of social interaction for weeks. Now, is that healthy? Not necessarily. However, it does make me enjoy being self-employed a lot. And it is really special, I think, to learn in my self-employment what hours are going to be the best for me to work. What are my clock in, clock out hours? And sometimes that varies day by day. And I have given myself permission to work when I want to work because, again, I know that I will get the work done. I am not going to be procrastinating. I need to trust myself that I can get the work done. Now, say that I am procrastinating, what have you. The best work I do is from the hours of 6 a.m. to 11 a.m. After 12 p.m., I'm pretty dumb. I really am not creative. That's just not when I'm at my best. And so a lot of times, because I am self-employed creatively, basically nothing I do has anything to do with business at all, except for answering emails, most of which are my own volition and people needing me to synthesize my own ideas into different forms. There's just nothing busy work about it, I guess. However, I get my biggest bits of creativity done. So I am an author. That is when I write. That's when I know I'm going to write. That's when I am my most creative, bar none, no competition. The afternoon is for things that don't take a lot of creativity and that I kind of don't want to do. I just don't want to do them. But you know what? The afternoon to me is a no man's land. And so I treat it as such. The afternoon is when I will change scenery. So I'll go to a coffee shop, I'll go to the library, and I'll put myself in a different situation. I'll go to the gym, I'll go on a walk. The afternoon is kind of my, how am I feeling treat time? After lunch, I check in with myself and I say, okay, what are we feeling like doing? Do I have a couple of hours more of writing in me? Because some days I do. And this is, again, part of being cozy in self-employment is collecting data about yourself of how am I feeling right now? What do I want to do right now? I know that I have to work, but am I going to work better at 10 a.m.? Is there an iteration of actually I want to go on a big walk first, or I want to just sit on the couch and watch TV first thing in the morning and then I will get to work? That's fine. Great, do that. Every day when I am self-employed, and especially, the fall is going to be big into this type of schedule because right now I am balancing self-employment while also being a full-time professional actor. And sometimes when I'm on contract and I'm also self-employed, my self-employment is a little bit more easy to curate and maintain because I do have other responsibilities and outside of the house. And so I'm pretty regimented. And again, life is making a decision for me when I'm not, though. And when we're free balling, so to speak, I am constantly checking in with myself. In the mornings, I check in and I'm like, how are you feeling? And then I journal about it. I journal. I put my feelings down. I am trying to get in touch with myself as soon as I clock in to my little house and my little work. And I am big on morning routines. I'm big on having something sacred that begins my morning. And it's awesome that I get to do that without being rushed. An unrushed morning is probably the coziest thing about self-employment. I can go downstairs, I pour my little water, I take my little scoop of coconut cult because it helps with things. I have a big mug of coffee. I'll usually unload the dishwasher. I make sure my kids' lunch is packed and ready for the day. And I sit down and I get to write. I get to do something. And that is another thing in the coziness of self-employment is I get to do this. This is really exciting. And I worked really, really hard to be here where I get to do this every day and I get to do this every day. How cool is that? How cool is that? Okay. So in the coziness, 1, fail, collect your data about yourself. It's so fun. Are you a morning person? Are you a late morning person? Are you a right before lunch? Are you an after lunch person? Are you like, actually, my working hours are best from 6 p.m. to midnight? Okay, do that. Are you in charge of your schedule? Great. You know how bad I would love my employer to ask me, Summer, when would you like to be at work? Because I would be like, I'll tell you right now, do not speak to me before afternoon because you don't need me to be creating worlds outside of my head. So I want that morning time to myself. Or maybe you have other hobbies, or maybe you have kids, or what have you. You don't have to work 8 to 5. You don't even have to work those full 8 hours. You know when you are at your best, or at your most creative, or at your most like willing to work and it doesn't feel like a slog. Do that. Do that. Know your hours. Know thyself. To thine own self be true. Give yourself a little treat. Okay? Whether it's a matcha routine or a yogurt bowl or a baking thing or a knitting pattern, give yourself a little treat in the middle of the day. Because when I was working an office job back in the dark days, I did, okay? I had a big old office. Crazy, right? Me. And I was 20. You guys, I fall butt first into everything I've ever done. It's amazing. It's amazing. Anyhow, there was nothing that I appreciated more than a little surprise treat in the middle of the day. Oh, we just brought really fancy coffee from the local coffee shop and it's in the green room. It's all free for anybody. First come, first serve. Thank you. Oh, there's donuts. Oh, there's music playing. Oh, we're going to open all the windows. I can just do that in my house. I can set aside a little treat day. And I think it's really, really exciting. So I'll do like, okay, I'm going to have a little illustration hour where I turn on a cozy YouTube playlist around 3. I make myself a really sugary sort of honey maple coffee, whatever, or matcha, and I'm going to slurp on that, and then I'm going to illustrate a cute little thing. That's what I'm going to do. That's my treat for the day. Or, okay, I'm going to get this really hard thing done of maybe it's something that isn't super creative or maybe it's something that's stressful. After that's finished, I'm going straight to a bookshop or I'm going straight to a little store or I'm going to buy myself this candle that I've really been wanting. You can give yourself little treats. Imagine if your employer, when you give a PowerPoint presentation that you were really worried about giving, said, here's $25, go treat yourself. Here's the thing, I'm not batting an eye at that, baby. You gave me $25. I don't care what this dynamic is. Thank you. Thank you, Zaddy. Thank you, Mommy. I appreciate that. Okay? I don't care. I don't care how it looks. I don't care how it feels. I love that. Give it to me. I would be elated. Or they just give me the afternoon off. That was a really hard thing you just did. Why don't you go take the afternoon to yourself? I don't mind if I do. I don't mind if I do. So really, I feel like a lot of the coziness does circulate around viewing yourself as if you were an employee and you were the boss. How do you want to be treated? How do you want to be taken care of in your workplace because you are an essential and only worker? How do you want to do that? How do you want to do that? Do you know what I mean? Also, curate a playlist, please. Turn on a little bit of music, all right? When I do have situations where I have to do busy work, or I need to, tidy up or do something in my office, whatever, something that's not requiring me to be overtly something. I put on Norah Jones. I put on early 2000s global coffee house playlist, and I just listen to that because I get to decide the soundtrack of my life, the smells of my life. I'm the one who sets the temperature of the office. I can decide to get dressed. I can decide to stay in my pajamas. I get to check in with myself and take the opportunity to build a working relationship with myself, because before I was self-employed and had this whole journey, I was pretty comfortable in being open and honest about the fact that up until I was 22, I did not have a relationship with myself emotionally at all. I had masked my entire life to the point where I just wanted to be tired enough of doing that at the end of the day that I did not have to think or feel everything that I knew was happening deep, deep, deep down inside of me. And if I was just kept busy enough and I just gave myself to everyone else over and over and over again, I would be too exhausted to think and feel. That's who I was. And so I did not know myself. I didn't at all. I had a working understanding of how to be alive and the things distantly that made me happy. And truthfully, having my son really forced me and kind of slapped me in the face to be like, you cannot do this. You stop it. Do you want your kid to act like this? No. So you shouldn't. You should not think that this is okay because you don't want him to think this is okay. And so I took years, and still do, of even getting to the process of knowing myself well enough that when I checked in with myself, I knew what I was feeling. What was I uncomfortable? What was overstimulating me today? And accepting the fact that because I am neurodivergent, because I have so many different iterations of, layers of trauma and blah, 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 as we all do, that I have worked through that and have sat with that long enough that I am able to, when I check in with myself, at least know how I'm feeling that day, and I know that it will change for whatever reason. There are some days I wake up and I feel endlessly creative. I feel like I have endless reservoirs in which to be able to engage healthfully with the people around me. I'm able to be present, etc. And then there are other days where I have, and there's no reason for it, I don't have those. I do not have those. Something has overstimulated me. I am burnt out and I didn't know it. I need a break from interaction. I need to do something creative. Like there's a lot of different fractions and equations of which I have learned that my body is just really sensitive. My body is sensitive and it keeps the score. But I've worked really hard to check in with myself, and I apply those principles now to being self-employed. I work really hard to check in with myself. Even over this weekend, I had a big drafting day because I am finishing up the second draft of my Shakespeare professors vying for the same tenure track position. I'm finishing up that second draft, and I want it done by the first week of August. I want to give myself 5 days to edit, and so it's on a pretty rigorous deadline. And over this weekend, because I was writing every day, write every day kind of girly. There was a day where I wrote a little too long and I ended up getting into that overdrive. I was in ADHD overdrive and I couldn't stop. But I had a moment where I was like, okay, I know that I'm doing this right now. I don't have to go down this path. So I closed my laptop. I told myself, this is a good word count. Just because you could do 5,000 more words does not mean you should. No one's grading you on this. You need to stop. Just like I would hope if I stayed at the office in this proverbial place for 10 and a half hours, that my boss would come and turn off my cubicle light and say, you cannot be in this building anymore and you cannot take your work laptop home with you. You have to have a boundary. You have to go live your life or you won't be able to show up and work well. You won't be able to do this. And I genuinely think that this second draft will be better than the first because it's going to be better than the first because it's second. Now I know more, but I have boundaries around it. And so when I am coming to it the next day, I am not coming to it with my hair falling out. I'm coming to it with an excitement and a creativity because I gave myself room to live. I gave myself room to live, which is still just as important of a goal as completing this thing. So this was all very long-winded, I realize. However, I feel like cozy at home, and it kind of always ends up this way, I feel like, in a lot of the cozy in the stuff I've noticed. Like cozy in the garden was a bigger relationship with the earth, and it was, semi-philosophical, and this is so much about like neurospiciness and having boundaries with yourself. And because it, like even writing, my biggest writing tip has nothing to do with the curation of grammar or whatever. It is you have to build a relationship with yourself, because until you know what you think, what you feel, what you want, what you need, I don't think you can be a good writer because you don't know what you feel. And writing is a practice of self-awareness. Yes. And I told my students this. Writing, yes, there is the claim, the argument, the conclusion. I don't care about a lot of that. I care about what you think. How are you feeling? This is about your brain and building a relationship with your brain. And self-employment is no different. It is always building a relationship with yourself and keeping data with yourself, but also giving yourself little treats and exercising your free will. Sometimes when I am in the middle of a project, because sometimes you are in the middle of a project that you have a deadline for and you have to get it done, and it's going to elongate your hours, what can you do on either end of that to ensure that you are taking care of yourself and you are seeing to it that your needs are met emotionally, physically, spiritually? So sometimes I give myself, I'll make myself an extra big bowl of oats, or I will sometimes write little notes to myself on my phone, or I will go on a little like thrifting. I want to get a sweater for this project. And not everything needs to be like a material thing, but sometimes it's nice, especially when you're self-employed, because it's so direct. Like, I made $15 from this ad or whatever. I want to thrift myself a little sweater that I am going to wear for the duration of this project, and this will be my cozy sweater a la a kindergarten backpack. I think that's a good thing, and I'm proud of myself for curating and giving myself the permission to feel joy and to have fun, because we as adults simply must be having more fun. And I love to have fun. I love to just randomly change my life on a Tuesday because I rearranged all of my furniture and I painted my walls different, and now it feels different. My life has a different air and edge to it. I like that. So anyhow, this has been Cozy in the Office series, which is really just a larger commentary on cozy and mental health series, I guess. However, I hope you are staying cool in this very hot weather. And I do have a book recommendation for this week. It is Redwall by Brian Jacques. I'm in a production of As You Like It right now, and we're calling him Jaques instead of Jacques. Anyways, Redwall series about the little mouse. I've never read it before, and I'm reading it before I go to sleep at night, and it is lovely and perfect and wonderful. And if you have, I would say, level 1 readers and above, it's a good read aloud book. And then if you have a little bit older kids, it's a great read yourself to sleep book, or it's just a great book in general. That's been fantastic. You can get my book. It's The Impossible Garden. It's on shelves. Also, you can snag yourself a spot on my Cozy Autumn in Ireland trip, which is happening in October this year. The link will be in the show notes. Also, you should listen to All Things Cozy podcast by Matt and Jillian. If you are into low stimulus podcasts, they are the king and queen mutually of coziness. I hope you have a wonderful day. And this is all for Low Stimulus Delilah. Stay cozy, stay chaotic. Bye.